It could be as simple as planting a seed that then, if it's something where we're sitting here and, Dylan, maybe I don't like your shoes. Well, then maybe every time you go to put on a pair of shoes, that little seed is sitting there, and it could fester into more that, oh, I have to worry about what shoes I wear now. And then it could expand more to, oh, well, is my outfit good enough? Is my physical appearance good enough? Do I need to shave? Do I need to, grow my hair out, or, so those,
so true.
It could start as a seed.
Welcome back to the Journey Coaching Podcast. I am Dillon.
And I am Adam, subbing in for Tyler and Abigail.
That's right.
Double subbing here today.
That's right. He's normally our producer, and he does a lot of the behind the scenes stuff, and he makes us look good, makes us sound good.
I try.
He does a good job because we're a lot to handle sometimes.
Your life, your journey starts now.
So this episode, we're diving into a Q&A on the last couple episodes we've had on mental health. So we thought it'd be valuable to just kind of hop in that way and talk about the important things we've learned the last couple episodes. With our guest, Diana, she brought so much wisdom, and I just found myself incredibly nourished by that conversation just because there was so much valuable content.
Yeah.
So I thought it might be necessary to just kind of let's talk about that.
Open the floor, have a nice organic conversation. Diana, the last two episodes really, really helpful, both on the preventative measures that could be taking place and what happens when you do need to seek some sort of professional help. And that's kind of the big question I have of what is worthy of seeking professional help, in a sense that she brought up some great hypotheticals to help explain some of these strategies that she talked about. And being honest, listening to it, I was excited to try some of these strategies, because I think they could be applicable in a lot of different facets of both external relationships between one and another, and just internally, and kind of how my internal dialogue acts, where I'm talking to myself, and kind of my, what would you call that, my self-perception. And so those were some pretty cool strategies. But my big question, first and foremost, is kind of well, how do we know if we need that professional help? And is it something to do with our kind of the events that take place? Is there a magnitude that we can kind of scale it by, or does it have more to do with our environment that we're surrounded in? Kind of what is that telltale, if you had to make the decision, what's that first key indicator of maybe I should see an external professional here to help address some of these issues?
It's such a good question, because it brings up the whole idea of what is worthy of needing to seek out help for, or even is the thing that I'm going through important enough to seek help with? Because some of the stuff that Diana brought up were kind of heavy stuff that not all of us can relate to. I know that some of the examples she brought up, I couldn't relate to, on a personal level.
Yeah.
I can understand how difficult it would be. She talked about a young child being hurt by the parents.
Yeah.
And I'm very blessed to say that that didn't happen to me.
Yeah.
I have other things in my life that were really hard to go through, that I would consider traumatic. And I guess that's something that I think we should define here is what is trauma, and how do we measure it? And I think it's kind of a subjective thing. It's something that's really hard, and maybe I would define as traumatic for me might not be for you, and vice versa.
Exactly.
And that could be a really something somebody said to me in the cafeteria when I was in elementary school.
Yeah.
Some mean kid says something hurtful to me, and it sticks with me, and it nests in my head for years.
It could be as simple as planting a seed that then, if it's something where we're sitting here and, Dylan, maybe I don't like your shoes. Well, then maybe every time you go to put on a pair of shoes, that little seed is sitting there, and it could fester into more that, like, oh, I have to worry about what shoes I wear now. And then it could expand more to, oh, well, is my outfit good enough? Is my physical appearance good enough? Do I need to shave? Do I need to, grow my hair out, or, and so those,
so true.
It could start as a seed. And I guess when we're going through these experiences that could become traumatic in our eyes, of it's causing us pain and doubt and hurting our self-image. I think that's the big key point of we want to make sure that these experiences are addressed before they get to the point where they are hurting our self-image. And so I don't know where we draw the line, in a sense, and I guess that's unique to the individual.
Yeah, I think that's what it is. It's like I think that's what it comes down to. Is it is unique to the individual, like how their experiences impacted them.
Like we said earlier, those little seeds that get planted, how do they develop? And tons of seeds could be planted throughout the days. Which ones do we give our energy to and our and give life to, whether they're good or bad? A personal experience of mine is just going through school. My parents planted a seed at a young age that getting grades were important. And while that has good intentions behind it, it almost turned into a sense that you have to seek your identity in getting good grades. It developed into more than that, to the point where if I did not get good grades, I was, grounded. I got some of my, when I was really little, I liked playing with toy cars. I got my toy cars taken away.
Oh,
and
what?
So I know, just because I got a couple questions wrong on my math test. And so, but as I grew and developed, I became overly aware of my academic performance, because when I was little, my identity was sought in whether or not I succeeded in the grade book. That was my identity, to the point where it grew and it was left unchecked, to where college exam season starts rolling around, and I am in a nervous fit, because I hadn't resolved that seed, and I let it become something that was closer to traumatic than it should have been, in the sense that I would have serious self-doubt in my abilities because of these exams, and I would put a lot of external pressure on myself. And so something very small develops into something much, much larger. And so that, along the way of, I didn't necessarily have the right environment to address that issue before it got too big, in a sense. And so that's kind of the big question at hand.
And my question for you, Adam, was like, did that seed growing into that pattern for you, the habit of thinking in that way, did it lead to you needing to seek out help from an external source, from somebody else, like a mentor, counselor, whatever it is?
Yeah. So this was one seed, and you can imagine where in my life, education became not the only seed where my identity was sought in. The same pressure that was put on me to perform well in school was put on me to perform well in baseball. Was the same pressure for me to go out and get a job at a young age, so that I could pay for a lot of stuff, and try and reach a social status that was deemed desirable by my parents. And so these became, it became a point where I was overwhelmed and focused on a lot of worldly attributes, to the point where I really did need to seek some sort of external environment where I had that kind of professional help. And I say professional, it wasn't by the world standards professional. My help ended up lying in the help of a friend.
Yeah.
and
And
the
help
family
is help.
of friends.
I mean,
So I was in such an environment where there was tons of pressure as a firstborn kid to be successful. Whether it was projected from the parents or just, like I said, those seeds planted within. There was a lot of pressure for me to go through and reach all these worldly goals that I was losing myself and kind of my own personal identity and where I should be seeking my value, in the sense that, those worldly attributes trumped, well, how am I treating people? How am I developing friendships and relationships around it? Am I sitting here and am I reaching my spiritual goals of, trying to grow my faith? All those different things, like those were put on the back burner because of this seed that was planted of my identity needs to be sought in a worldly aspect.
wow.
And so to answer your question of did I seek help, the help found me, luckily.
Sometimes
I didn't
that
ask.
happens. Yeah.
And the main source of the help was just a change of environment. Yeah. The idea being that it's not about the worldly actions. It's about what is underneath and kind of those intents behind it. And so I watched from the sidelines for a while of just them not worrying about the worldly results, and more about who you are in here. And then I was brave enough to, be like, hey, can you guys help me with some of these things? I'm really worried about this. I'm really worried about this. And they're like, well, that's all great. And some of these goals you may align with, but but it's not more important than who you are.
Yeah, that's such a good point, Adam, because this is something I learned when in college was that our decisions will come out of who we are, like our behaviors, the things we decide to pursue in life are really coming from a place of what our character is to begin with. If I decide to have a character of bitterness and anger towards the world, then I'm going to make decisions that interact with the world that way.
Exactly.
But if I decide my character is going to be that of graciousness, kindness, forgiveness, like I'm going to make decisions that follow that, and it's going to impact the world in an opposite way.
Exactly.
So yeah, I really, that's such a good lesson to come out of that.
And to draw back to what Diana was talking about, this hit home for me because Diana was talking about the 3 different aspects of your life, whether it's that social side, that spiritual side, or the worldly side. And she referenced them as canisters, where if you overfill one of them, they get, they knock over and they overflow into the other ones, and you don't have that healthy balance. And so I was originally in that place where my worldly canister, my physical my physical health or status was overflowed to the point where I wasn't treating and growing emotionally or spiritually.
And so that's such a good insight to have.
So that support system is it really, the first thing is identifying the situation. And what happened in my situation was I was able to identify through seeing in a different environment where a balance was needed, and I didn't have that balance. And so that's kind of where I thought, I was like, okay, I kind of need some help and direction here, because they're doing this and they're well balanced. They had their own struggles, but they were able to navigate through them, and they were able to process some of these feelings that they were having, and they were open and honest. And I was like, I don't have that, because I am so world oriented right now. I don't have the capability to, and I want to learn how. And so that was my kind of my red light, or my alarm was like, I don't have this. This looks healthy. let me ask for help.
So relatable. That just speaks to the importance of having other people, like community, to have that support system, because you wouldn't have found that by yourself. If you isolated yourself from those people, you would never have come to that conclusion.
Exactly.
And never learn the valuable lessons you've brought from it.
Yeah.
It just goes to say how important that is to have those people. And if I can also share some personal things too.
Yeah.
If
Yeah.
I wanted to make sure
Of course.
you made all your points because I want to dive into a little bit. But I
Yeah.
think looking at your story, Adam, is like a really good example of how, like, in that first episode where we talked about the preventative measures of like, and one of the points I was making was it's so important to find that support system, whether it's friends, family, people, adults you look up to, pastor, whatever it is.
Yeah.
Find somebody that you can trust that can help guide you and be patient with you along the way. That's so important. And for you, it didn't lead to needing to seek out the help of like a professional mental health expert.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
It wasn't a licensed therapist. It was simply people
Right.
that had my best interest in mind.
Yes, and really that's the beautiful thing about a mental health professional is that typically they do have your best interest in
Exactly.
mind. So it's so good,
Exactly.
like you're almost guaranteed to get that. But sometimes you don't need to. Sometimes you do find those people, and like you said, it came to you, which is an amazing thing to happen. And we're not all
lucky.
lucky to have that. And
Yep.
so, like, when you have it, I would just encourage people to just take advantage of that because you don't even know how good you have it. I mean, when it's given like that.
Well, there's always resources out there
Absolutely.
that you can go find it. I was fortunate enough; it practically fell in my lap,
Right.
and was made aware to me
Right.
before I even realized that there was a big issue. Because I could
Yeah.
have gone the next 10, 15 years without knowing that there was a better way out there.
Yeah.
Where there was a way to lead my life with the consideration of, well, how does it impact me in here?
Yeah.
Because beforehand I wasn't even worried about that kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I was so focused on the worldly stuff that didn't even cross my mind.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was, to put it bluntly, I was rotting from the inside out because I was so worried about my external appearance and my status and all that stuff. So I was very lucky that it fell into my lap because I very easily could have gone 10 to 15 years without it being addressed.
Or your whole life.
Or my whole life.
Because that happens.
It does happen.
It does happen. And I think like sitting down and thinking about these things are so important because then we're able to sometimes stop that from happening.
Yeah.
In the long run. Which why is like so like a conversation, something we say at Journey is like one conversation has the power to change a life. And
Exactly.
that's why we love having these conversations because it's so impactful. But so for me, I wanted to share a little bit of like how my journey, like the seed that was planted in my life, in my head at a young age, led me to the point of needing to seek out like mental health care.
Yeah.
Before I became a professional mental health counselor, I sought out the help of one. Mm-hmm. And it was like through that process that I learned that, being a counselor could actually be a job for me that I really like, it could be good at. So I'm really grateful that it led me down that path. But like if I had sought out help beforehand in the ways I needed help, like who knows if I would have gotten here, and maybe I would have eventually, but I think like just my personal journey led me to where I am, and I'm really grateful for that. But essentially, so like one of my things for you, Adam, it sounded like the grades thing, the success piece was like really impactful for you in your life.
Yeah.
For me, it was this idea of, am I good enough? I had this question ringing in my head constantly, and I'm not entirely sure where it came from, but I can look back at my life and see a ton of examples where that was true, where like even as a kid I wasn't aware, but looking back now I can be totally aware of that's what was going on in my head. One example, I think a lot of people can relate to this, and maybe you're on the opposite position and you're the one who I'll tell you I was never amazing at sports. I just never was. And so I constantly was picked last. I wanted to play with my friends at recess.
Yeah.
But so many times I heard, whether it was like said or whether I just like interpreted it, it was always like, Dillon, you're not good enough to be on my team. And that hit me, man. Like I always wanted to be good enough to be on a team, and I felt rejected. I felt unwanted because I didn't have those same skills. So even at like recess, I mean, repeatedly that happening is just kind of the seed of, I'm just not good enough to be on a team. I'm not good enough to partake in a sport and partake in a team and have value given with my skills. Yeah. And that for me has impacted a lot of the decisions I've made in my own life. And I'll tell you one particular instance. When I was working as a youth pastor, I had an instance where people were not liking what I was doing in my job.
Yeah.
They didn't like the way that I was leading, the stuff that I was leading. And not to say it was bad, it's just a disagreement, but I took that very personal.
Mm-hmm.
And it took me to a place of almost this despair of like, man, this job, I thought I was good at this job. And now I'm getting people telling me that I'm not good at this job.
Yeah.
And that really got to me.
Exactly.
It's like, it's like I had this need of feeling like I was good enough. And because I didn't have that need met, it's like my whole life was in scramble. So like this constant like cycle in my head of like looking at my external cues telling me that I'm not good enough. Like I was listening to other people so much and I was putting so much weight on their words and their expectations for me. And they were saying that like I wasn't good enough, or that's the way I was interpreting it, that like what they're doing, they don't see me as good enough. They're trying to get me out of this position. That's kind of what happened. They were trying to get me fired, but I'm not going to dive into all of it.
Right.
But it was a moment for me that I learned a lot about myself looking back at it. But what it actually led me to, Adam, was in that moment. That's the first time in my life I ever felt like I needed to seek out like professional mental health. Because I was talking to friends about it. I was talking to a coworker about it, and this coworker of mine told me that, Dillon, it might be a good idea for you to like talk to a counselor about this. Because what was happening was, it was like there's a culmination of all these things in my life that were happening. I had this doubt of, I'm not good at my job, so maybe I need to change career paths. And I had already begun to consider that idea.
Yeah.
And this was my journey to becoming a counselor, actually. I was a youth pastor. I had all these doubts of maybe this isn't what is the path for my life is supposed to be. But I liked aspects of it. And the aspect that I loved was sitting down with kids and just talking to them about their life and this type of thing, honestly, just conversation.
Yep.
And so I thought if I could get rid of all of like the organizing volunteers and all that stuff and just sit down with people on a regular basis, that'd be amazing.
Yep.
So anyway, what I'm getting at, so my doubt that I was good enough was being confirmed to me by the world that I was in. The environment that I was in was telling me that I wasn't good enough, which led me to a place of feeling like really anxious and stressed about my job. I felt like anytime I went there, I had very little motivation to do anything because I was afraid that anything I do is just going to get rejected by people.
Yep.
And it was irrational. Now that looking back at it, I'm like, obviously those thoughts are irrational. Yeah. But you get so internalized in your head that it's so good to have that communication with other people so they can say, I see what you're saying, but also you're wrong.
Right. If you don't have that both in your because you're in a situation where your mind is telling yourself you're not enough.
Yeah.
And it's being confirmed by your environment that you aren't enough. Which both of those are untrue. But they feel true because those are the two sources that are bringing that information into you. You don't have that external third party to be able to sit back and take in all the information and be like, whoa. Why are you
exactly?
Why is this the conclusion that we have got to? Because the way I see it, not connected to any of these, with no external interests. The way I see it, that's definitely not the case.
Yes. And that's exactly what happened. Was I probably could have sought help from a friend just like you did and spoke to them about this stuff. But for me, sitting down with a counselor for the first time in my life, quite nerve-wracking, by the way. If you've never done it, it's kind of scary the first time. And I say that now as a therapist who sits with people on a daily basis. It's still kind of nervous for me to meet new people that come into my office.
Exactly.
Because there's so many unknowns. But that's exactly what happened, Adam, was like I sat down with a counselor because I was starting to like feel like I was losing myself. And he was able to help me rationalize, like look at the logic versus just the emotions of it. Because what I was feeling was very real to me. But he helped me see more sides of it and helped me realize that just because my internal voice was saying I'm not good enough and it's actually being confirmed to me externally that I wasn't good enough doesn't mean that it is true. There's plenty of other proof in my life that speaks the opposite, that I am doing great, that I am good enough, I am valuable. But in that moment was just so strong for me. Just that period of my life was just very difficult. There was a lot of change that was happening. And so I was adjusting to stuff. And it was a big thing, like picking a career and what am I supposed to do with my life and what's God calling me to? What's that supposed to look like? And eventually it did lead me to where I am today, which I'm like, this is my dream job. I couldn't be happier in my career. And I honestly, Adam, I thought when people said that they were just full of it. Like there's no way that you can be completely happy in your career, never wanting a career shift, because I've had 13 jobs, not including this one. I've had 14 jobs, 13 before this one, and I always thought there's no way I'll ever find a job that I'm happy with. And I think the theme of that, am I good enough, has come through so much in my life that like even at jobs where I'm like failing or not pleasing my boss the way I want to, it's like I just take it so personally. Yeah. And I guess what I'm getting at is I think all of us have these things that kind of drive these insecurities that drive our decisions, sometimes in an unhealthy way. Yeah. And being able to sit down with people and to seek help, have that support system, learn how to deal with these emotions that come with it is really, really valuable. And sometimes you need, actually, I would say all the time, we need help to do that.
This is something where we're all about building these relationships and having these open conversations to help reach the place that you want to be. And so we would love to open a dialogue to you, whether it's in the YouTube comments or you reach out to us via email, or even just by going through the journey materials. That these are all great options. We would love to hear from you. And we are asking these key questions. If you have any questions of your own, feel free to comment them down below, and we will address them in future episodes. We love answering these deep questions because they really open us up for some wonderful discussions that hopefully bear some good fruit.
Thank you for listening. Tune in next time and make sure you like and subscribe. Visit us at journeycoaching.org and check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Start your own journey at journeycoaching.org.
Your life, your journey starts now.